Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 87, featuring Dan Jones, CEO of Calyptus, which is a Web3 hiring platform and a very cool concept and project. Welcome, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good, David. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Thanks for joining. I'm doing well. Joining from across the pond in the UK. It's a little bit later in the day over there, eh?
Yeah, man, it's getting dark. It's only 5 o'clock and it's pitch black outside. It's absolutely freezing, but nowhere near as cold as Canada, I'm assuming.
Yeah, no, it's definitely pretty cold over here. We probably got you beat on that front, but it's the middle of the day, so, still nice and sunny at least. But thanks for joining, and welcome everyone to Web3 Warriors. I'm your host, David Krome. I go by Krome in the metaverse, and today we're going to be looking at the topic of jobs in Web3, hiring in Web3, trying to find work in Web3, and really also how can the blockchain and Web3 be different from Web2 and actually maybe improve security, maybe improve some of the more difficult elements around both hiring and finding a job in the traditional industries. So we're going to take a look at everything that Calyptus is working on. They've got a really cool kind of platform that is blending AI with blockchain data to allow for a more kind of streamlined hiring process. Seems their focus right now is specifically on the developers and the engineers, but we're going to look into a little bit of their roadmap and what they're working on there as well. I foresee kind of a future where on-chain data is becoming more and more prevalent, right? And as there is, workplace data is on-chain and people's resumes and histories are on-chain, you can imagine this might lead to a future where things are a lot more easy to verify and a lot more transparent. So you get a lot better quality recruitment, right? And we've also seen that, in this era, there's a lot of kind of recruitment scammers out there, right? And a lot of real issues around the kind of proliferation of data and people using phone numbers and all this kind of stuff to reach out to people with false recruitment. So maybe blockchain can help kind of improve the security around that as well. And I think we've often kind of talked about Web3 data sovereignty and the idea that data should be moving into a place of more transparency, more accountability, and more ownership for the individual and actually understanding how your data is being used. And I think that falls into this conversation as well, looking at, hiring in Web3 and also finding work in Web3 as a developer or a creator of any other background. I think it's a very big industry. We're always focused on the creator economy in Web3 here on Web3 Warriors. So I think looking at the actual topic of job recruitment is definitely appropriate for that. I'm really excited about the concept of blockchain improving job recruitment. So maybe before we do a deep dive on Calyptus and really everything you're working on there, Dan, could you give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of what brought you to Web3 and what brought you to the blockchain? And then we'll dive into Calyptus. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose my story starts back in 2017. I'd just finished university in England. I was going to my first internship. It was like a pretty shitty wealth managers where it was like looking after pensioners' money, and it was all pretty boring. But I befriended the tech lead who was working there, and we would chat every day. We had this whole summer in 2017 where we would just chat about different technologies. Favorite kind of websites being like what but why. And this tech lead, really smart guy, just one day was like, "Have you checked out Ethereum? Have you looked at this kind of supercomputer in the sky?" And it just, as soon as we started speaking about that whole summer just changed my whole mindset around finance, around money, of course, at first, and then how digital assets work, identity, everything. But yeah, I decided to leave that wealth managers that summer and set up my own portfolio management business. And I was quite young, I was 20, 21 at the time, 22. And I was just starting my own business for the first time. I was managing kind of high net worth money, but then I was managing, my girlfriend's grandma's money who was wanting to get into investing in Bitcoin and Ethereum. Because most people at that time didn't know how to. They had no idea how to trade or why to trade or how to store, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. So that was my kind of entry into the ecosystem. But then by December, 2017, of course, the first collapse happened, and my first kind of market collapse happened. And I was like, wow, this industry is crazy. I'm trying to afford, crazy rent prices in London off the back of setting up a startup like this. So I realized, as much as I love blockchain, the bit that I really was truly enamored by was this idea of investment and this idea into technologies. And I started my career into venture capital. So I went to a company called Thunderbeam, and they were building the stock exchange for startups, and they were playing around with using blockchain for it to record all the transactions in which investors can invest into startups. They can trade their shares in startups, and they're moving across to the UK from Estonia. Wow. So I helped with that move. I helped build out the whole UK team, and increase their deal flow, and it was fantastic until COVID hit, because not a single startup or founder wanted to have any of their shares being liquid, because all these angel investors were trying to sell all their high risk assets.
Right.
And so as soon as that happened, fortunately, a friend of mine gave an intro to a VC called New Ventures, and I then led the analyst team there. They're like a deep tech VC fund. They invested into blockchain, into AI, all those kind of buzzwords under the sun. And yeah, it's always been a running theme and thread through my career. But only until I suppose just a very fortunate conversation with a software developer friend of mine that I've known since 2 years old, did he then tell me about him wanting to get into Web3 as a techie, and then me thinking with my co-founder, this is a massive problem, because we started doing lots of discovery for our friend, like how can he get into Web3? How can he become a Web3 developer? And then it just unfolded. That's how we then built Calyptus, or thought about Calyptus, and yeah, the last 2 years is where we've got to, and where we are today.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Can you share a little bit of your experience from that first crypto winter, and looking at the volatility of the market? How did it kind of form how you move forward after that? Because I personally, this is kind of my first crypto winter. This one we've just been going through. I've been kind of jumping into blockchain since about 2019, 2020, but really got more excited about it when I understood kind of the value of the digital world in the metaverse specifically, but also even NFTs, and the idea that you can buy art on the blockchain and support creators directly, through peer-to-peer. But it's been quite the environment, really, seeing the markets kind of fall the way they have, and the way that it's impacted a lot of creators in the space that have gotten discouraged. So as you as somebody who didn't get discouraged, from that first crypto winter experience, how has it kind of informed you going forward? And it seems like you've kind of got a more of a heads down kind of tech focus when you're moving in the space. But yeah, how did it kind of inform you as a business or entrepreneur kind of moving forward?
Obviously, because it's such a brand new world, seeing this whole thing collapse in front of me was just like, oh my God, this industry's over. And that is very natural the very first time you have a crypto winter. And so, like anyone, I had weak hands. I was like, okay, I've made a pretty good amount of money because I invested back in June 2017. I'm just going to get out at this point. Yeah. I wish I never did, right. and that's one of my biggest learnings, is because like this industry, without fail, pretty much every 4 years has a winter, it thaws and it booms even bigger than it did before. And this time around, I knew that I wanted to work through a winter. That's the best time to build, like Vitalik would say, because that's the moments that you've built a platform that's then scalable to then host that bull run for people who are entering the space. And so that was what I kind of learned from it, because I had plenty of friends who also joined the same time around you when you entered as well, 2021, and they also just sold. But I feel like when they see the next run, they're like, why on earth did I do that? So I almost feel like once you had two runs, then you realize right. you feel a little bit wiser, at least.
you gotta learn the hard way, I think. And I'm hoping that the next bull run, because one thing we haven't seen in the past was that initial kind of NFT bull run, right? And the way that digital assets on chain went up in crazy value and then crashed, similar to the way crypto crashes, right? And do you foresee the digital asset industry kind of having a similar kind of back to a bull run? Do you think it's going to mirror the crypto industry, or do you think that was more of a flash in the pan with the NFTs? Just curious, with your experience kind of having been in the space for a few cycles now.
100% think that NFTs will be going back to record highs. The internet itself was built on a model of copy and paste where anything that's digital can be proliferated into infinity. And so the value of anything can be zero. It can be literally zero. But when you have this technology and you can make something worth something because you know who owns it, regardless of how many times it's been proliferated by others, that is so special. And that with digital assets is something that's truly unique. And 100% it's going to be going on to the future. I'm very much looking forward to it, actually.
Nice. That's awesome. That's what I want to hear, because I'm still on the fence about it. Obviously, I've got a large collection of art on the blockchain, and whether or not it goes up in value, frankly, I'm happy with it. But it will be really cool to see the FOMO and or not even FOMO, but the excitement, come back to the industry, and the value, of course, coming to the artists and the creators in the space will be really cool to see. So awesome. Thank you for that kind of feedback, because I think your experience helps with that a little bit. So tell us more about Calyptus. What is the kind of mission and vision? I'm seeing it says, on the website that you can land a job 2 times faster in Web3's community, and you have 8,000 plus tech professionals in your network. So what is kind of the overall mission and vision of Calyptus, and how is it kind of changing hiring in Web3?
For sure. So going back to 2 years ago, that conversation with a friend in the pub who, I've known for a very, very long time, software engineer, wanted to get into Web3. From that research and initial kind of realization, okay, friend wants to get into the industry. We try to do some digging. All the talent platforms, whether it was education, recruitment, they were, especially the education side, incredibly hypey. They were, if not constantly redundant, because after 3 or 4 months, Solidity has already had an update. And so our platform, when we saw this problem and we saw that there were like 18,000 developers sustaining what was a 3 trillion industry at the time, me and my co-founder Callum were like, we have to build something. And it started as a learning platform with employment as the second part to it. It was like a bolt-on. We envisaged being this kind of Web 2 into Web 3 bridge, but not for younger builders. It was for older builders, because what we saw was there was the vast majority of talent platforms were really catering for the younger audience. But when we spoke to Web3 employers, so there's about 18 out of 20 of the key talent platforms are looking at helping junior developers get into the industry. And then Web3 employers that we spoke with were all saying they're having massive difficulty with finding seniors, full stacks, actual senior software engineers, product managers. And so we thought, let's become Web3's only Web3 career platform for senior builders. And that's what happened. And I think it's one of the key things that saved us as a company through the winter, is because we had this kind of value proposition where we were collecting senior engineers who are very high impact, very high value, and bringing to a platform where, they could learn, they could get hired, they can be part of community, they can join our events. We built this kind of community around seniors. And of course, although our business model became about recruitment, we weren't a recruiter. If you're an engineer on LinkedIn and you're good, you're getting badgered every single day from recruiters who are annoying you. But we came value first. When we approach people, we have this thing that's completely free. We have an Ethereum curriculum that was curated by the ex-CTO at Consensus. Wow. We have a Solana curriculum now that we got grant funding for that is completely free. We have weekly events from Austin Griffith to Nada Dabba who have come on, and we have a community and just lots of jobs. So it was something where we could provide value, a space for them, and not be pushy. They would find their own way through the jobs, and we would get paid out for that.
That's amazing.
So that's what we've been doing for the last 12 months. I suppose the next iteration of this now is based on a problem that we've been seeing in recruitment, which is this massive issue around recruitment fraud, which you touched on at the very beginning. About 10 to 20% of the applications that we're getting from jobs, almost exclusively coming from LinkedIn, fake or suspicious. And so what we had to do as a platform that is unautomated for version 1, we have to speak to the people. Are you capable? Are you even real? And then we realized from the AI boom there's been a 200% surge in fake candidates onto LinkedIn. So that
what a
50
mess,
million, 50 million fake accounts. And we have to sift through that. And Web3 employers have to sift through that. And actually all of tech have to sift through that. And, you know, confidentially can't say which employer partners of ours, you know, we've got like likes of, you know, big names. But 3 of them have hired people accidentally who ended up being fraudulent. They faked their location, they faked where they worked previously, they end up firing them. So this is a massive problem.
Yeah, and that's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money you spent hiring that person, and then a whole bunch of time you're spending getting, you know, off-ramping them, and then having to do it all over again to find their replacement. That's a headache for sure.
It's time, it's stress, you know, it's emotional turmoil, it's cost and money, it's rehiring, it's the cost of low output, low efficiency, retraining, all of it. It's a blockchain can actually create truth in anything. It's a trust protocol. And with that comes transparency, comes efficiency, comes speed. And that's what we're now going to be applying to, you know, version 2.
That's exciting. So you're ironically maybe using AI, which is being used by the fraudsters as well, but you're using AI to kind of combat them, right? And integrating that with blockchain on-chain data, essentially. Can you speak a little bit to that about how, you know, this is a new iteration, right? So has this been implemented already, or it's just kind of rolling out right now?
Yeah, so our CTO is building out the platform right now. It's about 70% built. We've got a team of 6 devs who are working full-time on this as well. It launches in Feb. And essentially the AI that we're using is for automating the onboarding of engineers into the platform. Because of course, doing verifications is something that not everyone wants to do. It's a headache, it's boring. But what we're doing is taking a CV, or even if it has to be your LinkedIn URL, and then applying that through OpenAI to then take all that unstructured data, structure it, and then provide what is a tick box exercise for the user as they go through our onboarding process. So, you know, filling out your whole profile takes a lot of time, but we have everything pre-filled for you, even down to your bio, you know, we've automated. So it's just a tick box exercise of saying, confirm this is true, these are my skills, this is my education, this is my experience. And so that's the AI that we're using to make the onboarding really smooth. But it's the blockchain that we're using. It's that is actually then securing that everything you're saying is actually true through either skill assessments, which we then credentialize into scores that you've achieved in JavaScript or Python, or social proof. So we've got your references who are, you know, have an email address from a previous employer. Maybe it's the HR team. Maybe you worked at Netflix previously. The HR team get an email from us, and they confirm that, and instantly you've got, you know, another green tick on your resume. We're building a fully verifiable resume, which is completely public and shareable to anyone in the world. It's completely free, and they can use that on our platform to land jobs with us, and also use the resume and URL to land jobs elsewhere. That's the idea.
That's fascinating. And I guess in theory, that would also make your platform pretty sticky, right? If you're the only ones kind of offering that kind of smooth, streamlined solution, the ones who want to be hired have to keep coming back to you? Or is it like once they get that resume and everything kind of ironed out, they can take that and go kind of do applications on another platform? Or is it like you kind of have to run through Calyptus and all the data is on file, like with your kind of user ID on Calyptus? Like, how does that work?
That's a really good question. And there's a lot of reasons why we're doing it this way around. So if you look at companies like Missouri, for example, they started with the resume. But if you think in the real world today, there's no resume company that is making lots of money. It's not like CVs are that kind of business.
Right.
You have to start with a business model first, and then apply something of value in the middle, which is the resume. And so we've started with a hiring platform and providing this resume as a key feature. But for us, we're making it completely free and shareable because it's, you know, it's a part of the Web3 values that we behold. You should own all of your data, because when you do any kind of interviews, if you do it at Aave, at Chainlink, at Polygon, you know, every time they check your backgrounds, your references, even your technical assessments, all that data is kept with those companies. Or if you're going to a technical assessment platform like HackerRank or Codility, again, that data is kept with those companies. But how the future really should be is that all these credentials that you earn or have proven through any process you've done in your life should be added to your employability. It should be added to your profile. I've done this test, I've done that test with this person. And you add this portfolio, and then you use zero knowledge proof to then actually gate who can see and can't see assessments that you want to show. So that's like the extra level on top that makes it really exciting. Right. And that's the future that we should be moving towards.
That is exciting, and kudos to you for taking that Web3 ethos, because you don't have to, right? And I think that's still an ongoing kind of discussion, and we do see more and more platforms emphasizing your data is your owner, like you own your data, and that is the ethos that we're hoping to see more of in Web3. So that's awesome that you're taking that approach. So I'm hearing that you kind of, in order to weather the crypto winter or to just have a kind of really durable business, you kind of had on one part identifying the niche of senior builders where there was like a gap, right? And then on the other hand, also offering that educational piece. And it sounds like you got some funding from a Solana or, I don't know, these layer 2 options to be able to educate more developers, right? Which works well for them. So you're not relying on, charging your developers and charging the people coming to your site. Instead, you get funding from the, actual blockchains that benefit from you advocating and sharing that knowledge. So that's a really kind of cool angle to take. Would that be an accurate assessment that basically that combination of like offering education and identifying that niche of senior builders has been kind of how you weathered the crypto winter?
Definitely, because just with this niche, for example, we don't want to be anything like a recruiter, like they charge 20 and 25%. We can charge 12% to Web3 employers, and it can still keep our company afloat with, we've grown from 5 to 15 employees in the last 6 months, and we're still cash flow positive. We can look after our whole team because senior talent, even if we are only taking 12%, not 20, they get paid a huge amount of money. So, focusing on seniors who are really hard to place, high impact, high value has really saved us through this crypto winter and been a real key reason as to why we've managed to almost, accelerate through the winter. I suppose on the education side, we realized at the very beginning, we're thinking, should we charge for our education? But again, Web3 values this is open source education. You should be charging for that kind of stuff. And what we realized is very quickly is we had to flip the model from learning first and employment second to employment first, learning second. Because if you look at any of the learning platforms through, think of it, as soon as FTX collapsed, 3AC happened, Luna, all that stuff happened in the winter, just took hold. If you think of all the pipelines of people or engineers that were coming into Web3, but suddenly U-turned and ran for the hills, were like, no, not learning that. That's way too risky. All the learning companies that are relying on those consumers to pay them, all these companies, I won't name them, but either had to shut down or they had to pivot. And it didn't really work out. And so fortunately, because we focused on employment where high quality companies, our partners, we've got 40 now, include Polygon, Chainlink, Wintermute. So some of the largest names in Web3, they're still hiring because they're high quality. They still have a model that works. And that's kind of the key thing for us, I think. Education being paid for by the likes of Solana Foundation based on our milestones is a really amazing supplementary revenue stream for us that has helped us through, this winter as well. And it's great to have their kind of backing, especially as they're now a really up and coming chain. And I think they've shown true resilience through this winter. And I think over the next year or two, they're going to have some incredible success.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Solana here as well. I was always interested in kind of the gaming angle that they take on the blockchain, and I like the Star Atlas project. I'm always a fan of that. But yeah, very cool that you got that Solana connection. Shout out to K-Bot in the chat. He asked a pretty cool question here. I think we spoke to it briefly a little bit, but he's saying, can on-chain employment verification and background checks really be a thing in the future? And I think he's speaking to the more broader job market. He's also an HR manager in Hollywood, so he's curious, from that perspective. Do you see this on-chain data becoming more useful and actually impacting the broader kind of job recruitment and HR market, I guess? 100%.
100%. I mean, what recruitment is today, and there's a reason why it has a really bad name for itself, is because it is truly opaque and it is backwards in many, many ways. And transparency and seeking that truth is something which every industry should thrive for or seek to achieve, but especially in recruitment. And my belief in identity and blockchain is for me is the number one thing that I think is going to be the first thing to truly hit. Like having all of your credentials in a wallet on chain, where you don't have to do long processes online that involve legal documentation or anything like that. It's just connect your wallet and it's done. Like, I really think identity is a massive part of this, and especially in recruitment. The way we see it is this: if you are able to take AI resistant technical assessments, so they prove that you actually did the test when you're doing that test, and you're not copying pasting from ChatGPT, because you have the software to do that, and it's looking at your face so it knows it's you. If you're able to capture that value, because of course a blockchain, if the input is incorrect into blockchain, it's there forever, that's rubbish. But there are now fantastic platforms that are able to make these assessments be true and pure. Once you've captured that information, you then have a true verifiable credential that this person is good at JavaScript, is good at Python, is good at any of these kind of skills. And for social proofs, if someone has an email address at the likes of Netflix and you email that person saying, can you prove that I worked with you? Again, you've got a social proof that someone with that email address is standing up for you. Why would they say so otherwise? But you have all these different routes in which you can pull this portfolio of credentials to make your case. And as soon as you've done that, you completely disrupt the whole hiring process, because typically it would involve assessments, background checks, ID checks. But if you have all of that stuff done up front, before you even interview, it means the hiring process time is cut in half, because then all the hirer is doing is speaking to you as a human. What are your motivations? Do I have chemistry with this person? Do I think they suit our culture? And those are the key things, the human side that comes into it. All your assessments, your credentials, everything else is done up front, and it should be that way. It shouldn't be a candidate always proving themselves every time they do a new interview or want to change job in their career. It's an absolute headache. Prove it once, one time up front, put it on chain, and that's your identity. And that's the future that we should strive for. Not just like it can happen, we should, and it will.
That's it. Technology for the win. Amazing question, K-Bot. Appreciate that. And I agree, it just makes sense basically, but I think the technology and the society has to catch up with the technology, I think. And on that point, do you think that hiring in Web3 in general, now it's clear you've taken a very Web3 approach to hiring in Web3, but do you think that in general, in the broader kind of industry, is hiring in Web3 being done very differently than it had been done, in Web2 and traditional industries? Like, how are you seeing kind of that evolution? And obviously you're leading the charge on the on-chain side of things, but how do you see the difference between the two?
Hiring in Web3 is a bit more different to Web2, because unfortunately, Web3 does attract a lot of scammers, a lot of anonymity, which does mean there are many bad actors that hide behind many of the positives of blockchain, which is having privacy and being anonymous. So in Web3, there's definitely, you have to have a better filter. So 100%, we've created a solution which is highly applicable to Web3. But when you scale it out to our trajectory, we're just raising our seed round currently. Our trajectory is to, by Q4 next year, is to be moving into all of tech hiring, nice. Where because of the AI boom, because of the amount of fake candidates, because this recruitment fraud problem is much larger than just Web3, it's the whole world and the whole of recruitment. Okay. We are moving into the wider space, but we're bringing blockchain with us. We're bringing all that verification AI with us. To redefine transparency. So we see it on the larger market, and that's what we're going to be moving to.
That's amazing. And I know we talked offline a bit about the creator economy side of things, right? So obviously this niche of senior developers is serving you very well. But shout out to K-Bot, and we talked to a lot of others as well who are building digital assets in the metaverse, or who are creating art, or creative projects essentially on the blockchain and need to hire assistants, but maybe it's not, really high level engineers, but really just like, oh, I need a graphic designer, a Web3, related, someone who has Web3 experience, but also graphic design experience to help me with this project, or maybe I need a 3D builder to help me with this project. Are you looking to branch into kind of that broader Web3 ecosystem, looking at, job recruitment and hiring?
100%. Yeah. So although we are, I suppose, branded as senior engineers, that's where we've started, the rest of 2024 is all tech professionals. So it's, all designers, creatives, UX, UI, these individuals that work very closely and make up the whole tech industry as a whole, working side by side with the engineers. So yeah, we are moving now into these types of creative roles more and more, because they're, UX UI is one of the we all know it's one of the worst things in Web3, and it's one of the biggest pain points, and there's a huge amount of opportunity there. So anyone who is in Web2 and listening and is a designer, move to Web3, you can be paid a lot more and you might be solving some pretty interesting things.
Yeah, solving some big problems. UX and UI being the user experience and the user interface for any listeners not aware. But yeah, definitely it is a big hurdle still. Those of us who enjoy the techie side of things and, we're okay with linking up our MetaMask and understanding, the different layers to digital ownership, that's cool. But not everyone is going to be able to, do the learning necessary to really onboard in that way. And how do you feel about that conversation about kind of quote unquote mass adoption, or making it easier for the average person out there to engage with Web3 and the blockchain? Do you think that is an important focus, or do you think that like society eventually catches up and we just keep focusing on the technology and not be too concerned about how easy or difficult it is for people to adopt the technology?
I mean, blockchain is naturally it's intrinsically it timestamps. It is a back-end technology. It's not something that the world should know. Like 99% of the world don't know how the internet works. We just literally use it. Right. So blockchain should very much be the same. Like you don't have to know, I suppose, how blockchain works. You want to know that, one, it is secure for sure. That is something you can trust. And you want to know that it solves problems for you, whether it's speed, whether it's efficiency, whether it's lowering costs. So yeah, I see for mass adoption, it just has to bring use cases. The world doesn't need to know how blockchain works, and want to make it easy for them. For us, for example, when we move our platform from Web3 professionals to all tech professionals, it's critical that we have in place the option for the user to either have all the NFT credentials that they gather from our platform, the social proofs, the technical assessments. They can own that NFT, and so they say what's their public address, and so we send the NFT to their address. Nice. But if they don't, or they just don't simply care, because a lot of people just don't care about blockchain, then we can hold on to that NFT for them. And if you imagine us as a spaceship and we have little space shuttles, we can add, information into the space shuttles. And if they want to take that information and take it to their own wallet at some point in the future, they can. It's Soulbound, so it's a one-time transfer. We'll send it to them, and then they own it forever, and we know it's them. Wow. But it's that kind of stuff where if they don't care or don't know what it is, we just make it as simple as possible. Don't worry, we'll look after it for the time being. But if you do care about this stuff, and you do care about user ownership, and you do have your own crypto wallet, by all means do that, and we support that.
That's amazing. And if it's Soulbound then, and you transfer it, but they come back to you and they're updating their data, right? Can it then just be updated? Like, does the metadata get updated, or would it just be a whole new NFT that you send over?
Good question. It gets overwritten. Yeah. So we overwrite that information. So for example, if you did a bad test and you don't want that, and you think you're better than that, of course you have the opportunity, like any human, to give it another shot and go back and try again. We overwrite this information in real time as you do new assessments, as more social proof comes in from references, from people you used to work with, skill endorsements, all these different things. They update in real time.
All right. So even though it's a Soulbound NFT, the metadata is not necessarily frozen, and it's still kind of updatable.
it just can't be transferred.
Can't be transferred, yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Shout out to Vitalik and this Soulbound concept. You know, it's cool to hear a use case where it makes perfect sense. And in the job recruitment space, I definitely see it. Looking at that NFT as a proof point, right? Can you just give a little bit more detail on that? I know you've spoken to it a bit. Just how is it actually being managed, you know? So it's like each user has kind of an NFT assigned to them, and then as they're, you know, doing professional things, getting social proof points, all of these things are kind of just being added on their record, I guess, and this is all on chain, and it's kind of tied up in a nice bow with an NFT essentially. How does that work?
Yeah, so as soon as the user joins our platform, a NFT is generated for them, and either that it's going to be held in a wallet for them on their behalf by us, or it's in their wallet. So we connect their MetaMask or, you know, any other partners that we can, you know, just connect their wallets for. Cool. And then the NFT will sit in that wallet, either with us or with them. And then, yes, as they do their assessments or they gather social proof, it's automatically, as it comes through, it's automatically added to the NFT's metadata. But the most important thing is, of course, like, you don't go around showing recruiters your NFT and say, look at my metadata, this is what I've got. Of course you don't do that. Yeah. And that's why we have this shareable, fully verifiable resume. So if you've got the NFT in the background, the NFT is always talking to our front-end UI resume. So John Doe has all his NFT verified JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. All these green ticks are flashing on John Doe's UI resume saying this JavaScript has been verified, so is this Python test, and so is their deployment working at Netflix, and their skills have been endorsed for management and leadership and everything else. That's all those green ticks is literally just our UI speaking to the NFT, and we enable this lovely UI to be shared with anyone in the world. So we don't think that this data should ever be confined within the Calyptus ecosystem. You know, this is your resume, and ultimately for us, it's free, but it's a fantastic distribution channel for us. You know, if we haven't got a client, maybe, I don't know, Binance or even Amazon, and John Doe is applying to one of those jobs saying, oh, by the way, this is the most employable version of me. It's not a black and white piece of paper. Everything's verified. Now Amazon is seeing Calyptus as a source of truth. It's a huge distribution channel for us. So hell yeah, it's free, and share it with everyone you want.
Look at our awesome IP. Look what we've built. Look how we're helping the ecosystem, right? And you know, verifiable proof points. Wow, that's really fascinating. So I'm curious, what is the kind of core infrastructure now? Using Soulbound NFTs, I assume means that it is kind of ERC, right? Like it's on the Ethereum network or a layer 2. Are you able to speak to that a little bit? You know, you don't have to get into too much proprietary information, but you know, how is, like, are you married to one blockchain, or, you know, obviously you're integrating Solana, you've got some other L2s on your site here. What is your kind of core infrastructure that you're building this on?
Yeah, well, we're going to start with Polygon just because, you know, it's just lower in transaction fees. That means every time you overwrite that metadata or create or generate an NFT, and, you know, we currently have 8,000 users. We're growing at 500 every week. We should be at 10,000 by the end of Christmas. So,
congratulations.
You know, by the end of next year.
That's some good growth right there.
Yeah, it's you know, the last 6 months has been pretty crazy, and you know, we're really grateful for that growth. And you know, but as that happens, it becomes a problem for us, because imagine if we did that all on the Ethereum network, and you're spending $27 each time you're doing a transaction. Yeah. That's not great. So Polygon is what we're using. But when we're starting off with just using a generic, you know, NFT on the Polygon network, and all that metadata is being added. But the future for us is Polygon ID. We think that their tools could be built out a bit further. They should be having more validators as well as a platform, so it's just a bit more spread. But Polygon ID is super interesting, because that's where we start using zero knowledge proof. That's where the individual has personal information that is hidden. Because of course, for us, when we generate an NFT, you know, for version 2 and we launch that, we can't add personal information, because GDPR would say where's the right to be forgotten? You know, if John Doe has his NFT and if John Doe is linked to all these different skill verifications, that's not good. But instead, the NFT just has, we know it's John Doe's because of the public address that he had given to us, and it has all his metadata. But Polygon ID, because it's ZK proofed, we can have all that personal information. John Doe can own all of it, and it can all be interlinked, and you can reveal the information how you want to an employer or to anyone, and it's still GDPR compliant because it's consented by the owner, by John Doe. So that's our evolution, moving from Polygon normal NFTs into Polygon ID.
And is Polygon ID the only layer 2 kind of using zero knowledge proof for this purpose, or it's just kind of the best, and you already have a good relationship with the Polygon team, so you're kind of looking at it as the best option?
I trust our CTO.
Okay, I hear you. I know, I like to get into the techie nerdy questions. I'm just curious.
We love Solana. Nice. Solana, of course, is super fast. And it's it's just a fantastic ecosystem, and of course they have compressed NFTs, so the ability to mint millions of NFTs for a couple of dollars, it's crazy kind of innovation that's happening there. But Polygon ID, because it's purpose built for identity, and for us looks like the maturest version of identity, or decentralized identity going at the moment. That is why we're on there. But if a new one comes up, then we'll definitely be investigating.
Very cool, very cool. So would it be fair to say that Calyptus is generally blockchain agnostic, though? Like very much just wanting to help the whole Web3 blockchain ecosystem, and not necessarily, playing favorites, between the different competing options, and especially those different layer 1s, right? How do you feel about that conversation?
Being chain agnostic, we would love to, as long as the tech's there, and if a user wants to connect their Phantom wallet instead to collect their identity, we're completely on board with that. And if it's a near wallet, we're completely on board with that. Of course, you have to start somewhere, and so we're starting with the most well-known and most used, which will be at least EVM based. But we want to be agnostic, and we want to be serving the whole industry, and people who have, their identity stored on the wallets they prefer.
No doubt, no doubt. And I'm curious, and I know I mentioned this before the show, but you don't do a lot in the metaverse space, but are you seeing anything from the industry as far as like movement? Because there's a lot of people, in 2021, all the hype in the metaverse, a lot of speculation, a lot of plots of land that didn't even exist yet being sold for many thousands of dollars. So I think that part kind of hurt the idea of the metaverse and the adoption of digital assets in the metaverse. But from a job recruitment standpoint, are you seeing that conversation come up at all? Or are you seeing developers from different blockchains that want to build in the digital world and actually are, have those kind of projects, metaverse-based projects out there? Or is it still really quiet?
So if you think of I suppose which business models are working right now and which ones are actually creating revenue, it's very much in the DeFi space. The likes of Aave, Uniswap, they're being managed by really not many people and generating millions in revenue and actually profitable. So DeFi is definitely having it's continuing just to grow quickly. And I see a lot of growth there. In terms of metaverse, we haven't seen, I suppose, many jobs opening metaverse, but my inkling is that because, as you mentioned there, this whole 2020, 2021 boom, which there's so much investment going into metaverse, especially in gaming. Gaming, it's larger than the whole of the entertainment industry. It's larger than music. It's larger than the whole film industry. Gaming and the metaverse literally go hand in hand. And since all those projects were funded around 2021, it does take a number of years before the game's been developed. And my feeling is now the market is soaring. 2024 could be a huge period for all these games now actually maturing, actually being developed and being launched. And also a lot of this is being propelled by, again, Apple even launching their own mixed reality headset. This stuff is happening, even with the largest businesses in the world. I think even McKinsey said going to be a 3 to 4 trillion, maybe bigger than that, industry by 2030, the metaverse.
Yeah.
So it's definitely coming. From our platform, it's been made DeFi, but I reckon there's going to be a quick increase over the next couple of years.
No doubt. That's awesome perspective. And on DeFi, and that basically being never ending, I think that there's a kind of speculative, and I sometimes say gambling kind of side to DeFi. How do you view that industry? And do you think that, from a looking at it from a strictly actual financial services investment, like comparing it to investing on Wall Street or, in stocks, how do you see the evolution of DeFi? And clearly that's a big part of the clients that you're working with. So how is that evolving? And do you think it's generally a healthy evolution in kind of competing against your traditional banks, your traditional stock investment type of thing? How do you view DeFi? And do you think it's net positive for society, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, coming from traditional finance, in wealth management originally, and I did a bunch of, my degree was in economics. Like you learn about all this stuff about traditional finance. You're using clearance houses that were built literally in the 70s to look after how stocks and shares are traded globally. It's T+2. It means it takes a couple of days for the trade to actually go through. It is legacy tech. It is slow. It is clunky, and you can't change it because it's like changing, the engine on a moving train.
Right.
And so DeFi is something which is truly evolutionary for that process. And I love the fact that Larry Fink, the CEO of the largest asset manager in the world, they manage trillions at BlackRock, is so in favor of Bitcoin and thinks that tokenization is going to change the whole stocks and shares market, any kind of asset market for trading. So I see a huge potential for DeFi and where that's going. Their ability to create true efficiency in terms of time, in terms of cost. I think it's going to be a massive move. I think the important part though is how the fintech channels and DeFi actually stick together. DeFi can't just sit siloed inside Web3. It has to be able to have the right off-ramping with traditional fiat assets, so it becomes something that is global. We'll get there, obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm in the fintech space myself in my day job, and I definitely see a lot of that. It's all about that on-ramp, off-ramp, making that as frictionless as possible and really streamlining that. So that's an awesome take. And I agree, DeFi, as you kind of framed it, is the evolution we need, right? Like these antiquated legacy systems. It's going to be curious to see how the traditional stocks start to bleed into DeFi or bleed into this kind of blockchain-based trading, because it should ultimately, to your point about the time it takes to actually make stock trades, the fact that a lot of these entities add fees right on top of each stock trade that can be quite a lot, so yeah, I think DeFi is the solution maybe that we're waiting for on the financial services side of things for sure. I was wondering, how important do you think it is, looking at the crypto winter, looking at being a real Web3 business with a clear mission and vision and providing a real solution, how important is it to attend conferences and kind of IRL events and do that side of the networking game to be successful in Web3? Because I've been attending a lot of conferences over the last couple of years, really since we started this podcast, and it's always interesting to see the way that different brands approach these conferences, and some just do like a satellite event and don't spend a lot of money on the proper conference, but a lot of people are throwing a lot of money around. So I guess I'm just curious from like a, data or market research perspective, like how useful do you think that is, to you to be attending these conferences? And is it something that you do often?
It is really, it's good timing for this, because actually, especially for our business, and I'm only taking our perspective, if we're reaching out to new employers, we're very fortunate that we've got fantastic employers already, some of the biggest in the industry. But when it comes to finding new employers, it's very difficult to stand out. Like if you're trying to do cold emails to any leader, Alchemy, into Binance, whatever it is, you're not going to get anywhere with a cold email. You're not going to get any of these players, let alone even small players, because you don't stand out amongst the other endless stream of recruitment junk emails that you're getting where you can't differentiate yourself. And obviously we try with we have a community of education and jobs, but that's helpful on the candidate side. That's not very helpful on the employer's side. They just want to know, well, yeah, how do you stand out? And it's very difficult. Right. So to truly stand out to employers and on that first point of contact, IRL events are super useful because you are able to have that natural connection, that natural building of trust, which you can't get virtually. You have to be able to meet these people in person, have a beer with them at the event, talk about whatever, share interests, and they trust you. My co-founder Callum was just at a conference the last couple of days, a little bit too corporate-y, unfortunately, but it's definitely something that we are actively now doing. We unfortunately couldn't go to Breakpoint last year. This year we just had too much going on, but ECC the year before was fantastic. I mean, we've had a bunch of clients from being there, nice. like a bunch of great builders, saw Vitalik on stage. So yeah, I think conferences do have a lot of value. They are hit and miss, and you probably already know that. Like, you can't always get them right. But other times, events are fantastic. Super Team UK, who are the kind of talent layer of Solana, so they help Solana build out their kind of talent, and we work obviously with Solana. They did a fantastic event in London, and I met everyone that I wanted to meet there. Just sometimes things click and companies do it properly. But yeah, you just gotta network, and serendipity will hopefully land.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a big difference between, doing IRL conversations and trying to have that pitch in a cold call or a cold email. It definitely makes a world of difference. So it's good to hear. And when you're talking about kind of being too corporate-y, and I've definitely seen a lot of that. I like to say that there's kind of the opera crowd and the hip hop crowd in Web3. And it's like, the hoity-toity kind of like real well-financed, like paid $10,000 to come hang out with us kind of crowd. And then the people that's like, free drinks, come check out the art we have at this show, and the community comes out. How do you feel like the best route to take is? Like, do you think you have to kind of have that balance between the kind of creator, kind of grassroots community, and then the VC and the funders and the actual, corporate entities? What do you view as like the best kind of events that you've attended?
Yeah, I think the best, unfortunately, the corporate ones, they oftentimes are using the likes of Hyperledger and R3, but those are highly centralized entities. They're not decentralized very much at all, and because of that, the use cases are relatively limited, or just ended up being reasonably redundant. And so oftentimes, if it's like IBM or Deloitte or larger companies that are running on these chains, it does seem less valuable until you go to an actual Web3 event and some of the really interesting things that actually are decentralized. And at the same time, there's a huge amount of money and there's a huge amount of network to build with a lot of the likes of IBM and Meta and Deloitte, for example, because over time they are entering the space. Over time they are thinking about the metaverse. They are thinking about using blockchain. They have their own innovation divisions. So I do think like a balance is good. I just think large corporates moving into the decentralized world, that right now there's a lot of blockers in the way. It's perhaps too high risk. It's perhaps the regulatory framework hasn't been played out yet for them. Yeah. But you need a bit of both, because then you can join the two up, Web 2 and Web 3. They have to work in tandem.
You got to have the balance for sure. And yeah, it's a fascinating space, I think, and it's interesting to see how things are evolving here. Thank you for your time, Dan. It's been amazing. Is there anything else you kind of have around the corner that you're really excited about, that you're looking forward to from Calyptus? Anything you want to share with us?
No, I suppose, of course we're launching in Feb. You know, with all our blockchain verification and AI automation, we've finally got a platform that is going to work, hopefully, in many processes by itself. We're not the humans in the middle doing a lot of the work. So we're really excited by the launch. If you are an engineer, if you are a creative, and you are, you know, really interested in Web3, then, you know, hopefully our platform can be truly valuable to you. Creating your credentials one time up front, and then we aim to make hiring 2 times faster for you. So yeah, check us out on Feb.
Yeah, that's really, really exciting. You know, I think we've learned a lot, the way you're using Soulbound tokens, the way that you're going to be leaning on this zero knowledge proof and this Polygon ID. It's really given me a lot to think about, and I think you've added a lot of value for our audience, and just looking at, you know, the way that the blockchain and on-chain data can impact job recruitment all around, you know, not just in the tech space and not even just in the blockchain space, but really in society more broadly, you know, as the technology continues to evolve and increase in adoption. Thank you so much for these opportunity to kind of pick your brain and learn about that. I still have a lot to learn on the zero knowledge proof side of things. Soulbound, you know, I've seen it being talked about for like university credentials or, you know, government IDs and that kind of thing. But the way that you're looking at it from job recruitment just makes so much sense. So it's cool to hear about an actual useful use case for Soulbound in such a clear way that's actually being used and rolled out again next month or next year. Really exciting. Yeah. You know, wish you the best of luck on that rollout in February. Thank you everyone who's tuned in, and thank you so much, Dan, and thank you to everyone who tuned in for the live stream. Until next time, we'll catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.
Thanks, David. All the best. Cheers.